I think the best managers that I ever had in my career, working in a lot of different industries, would have also been really good dungeon masters. And probably vice versa. All my dungeon masters would have been good managers, I think. Let me tell you why. Welcome to Geek Philosophy, where we love geeky wisdom. If you're new to the channel, my name is Brian, and we release new videos weekly, so please consider subscribing and turning on the notifications and clicking the little bell to do that, and liking, and doing all of those things. That way you don't miss out on anything. And it helps us a lot. Please do it. Thanks. If you ask people that I work with over the years, you may find out that I'm prone to using analogies quite a bit, and puns, but I'll keep that to a minimum today. One analogy that I don't think explicitly was expressed with any of my colleagues, at least that I can remember doing, was a comparison that I make between D&D and the various jobs I've had over the years. No, I've never been employed as a guide to help carry a ring to a volcano or anything like that, but I have been able to build some connections between D&D and, for example, managing a team. I recently came across a recording of a TED Talk, and it was one of the first times I heard someone provide a similar analogy about the same topic. I'll link to it in the doobly-doo below, but it's appropriately called D&D Taught Us How to Run Great Teams, and you should definitely check it out. Just remember, in this video, I'm giving my thoughts on this, so don't take my opinion as any authority on this matter. If it connects with you, great. If not, no worries. Maybe it'll spark some of your own thoughts on a similar topic. Okay, let's roll. When I think of an archetypical D&D party, even one with just the basic classes, you've got some type of warrior, a skillful technician of some kind, an arcane enthusiast, and at least one person who can patch everybody up when they need it. So the characters themselves are usually a team, but the players, the ones controlling those characters, are also a team. They're the ones making sure that the characters are working together as long as the players are working together. In the best circumstances, things run like a well-oiled machine. You would think managing all this is just up to the DM, but actually it's a collaborative effort between the Dungeon Master and the players. But I do see some parallels between D&D and managing really any other type of team. So here are a few things that I think make for a good adventuring party and for a good team in general. First, the best adventuring parties and teams value diversity. In D&D, having a party with a variety of different races and classes and backgrounds is a great way to tackle all kinds of situations. Some characters are better suited for frontline combat, for example, while others are really good at sneaking past the enemy to gather intelligence. Some characters are great at communicating with others outside of the party, but others are the perfect investigators or researchers. And the varied cultural backgrounds of each character can provide a unique insight into a variety of situations. The same is true in our world. The diversity of the team itself brings a diversity of skills and ideas and interests and capabilities, and that helps the team as a whole. There are some members of a team who take the lead in some situations, but serve in a support role in other situations, and that can change depending on the circumstance. Also, the best adventuring parties and teams have common goals. In D&D, a campaign is usually defined by at least one overarching goal. It could be something very straightforward like defeat the dragon or get rid of the pesky ring, or something really complex like negotiating a treaty with a bordering kingdom. Same thing in the real world. Well, unfortunately no dragons, but the concept I think still applies. Having a common, clearly stated goal is a big factor to ensuring everyone on the team is on the same page. In D&D though, there isn't a single way to achieve the goal. Players and their characters make a whole bunch of different choices, and the DM usually doesn't know what they're going to do, and they get their party closer to the goal, hopefully. Sometimes in the real world, this can get a little tricky. In a work environment, some managers prescribe a course of action and make their team stick to that no matter what. And that may be appropriate in some situations, but not all of them. The best managers I've ever worked with had communicated clearly and defined the goals, and maybe they set out a set of parameters, but they let their team of heroes, get it, figure out the rest of how to get there. That said, the goals have to be good ones for both D&D parties and for other types of teams. If the goals are the desired outcomes for the group and the individuals, it's best to begin with the end in mind. Where do you want to go? What do you want to achieve? You may be familiar with the concept of SMART goals. I think this acronym works as a starting place to setting goals for all types of teams, but even for dungeon masters who are trying to plan out their campaign. SMART goals are specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. When the goals are specific, they define what actually needs to be accomplished. And being measurable could be as simple as completing or not completing something, or even achieving a certain amount of milestones leading to the final completion of the goal. It's important for the goal to be achievable. Not much fun in a D&D game if the quest isn't possible, and even less fun in the real world if a team is asked to do something they have no ability to do. Not good management. When the goal is relevant, it fits in with the overall purpose of the team, which helps the members of the team understand how important it is. And goals are best when they have some type of time constraints. This doesn't have to be really rigid at any level, but it needs to have some guidelines in place to move things forward. From a D&D perspective, I want to mention that this can be extremely important to the overall story of the game too. You have a story and a plot that's trying to move forward. Let's not forget that these SMART goal concepts apply to individual goals too. Each member of the team should also be able to achieve their own individual goals along the way. So in life, managers often have to figure out what work needs to be done and then assign it to their team. I know. This can vary from project to project, but it could also be pretty consistent if the team roles are clearly defined. Everybody has a certain job. D&D works a little differently, so this comparison shouldn't be taken too literally, but I found that there are still a few parallels between designing a project or getting work together for a team and designing a D&D campaign. One of the major tips is giving the right job to the right person. However, in D&D, you don't know what your players are going to do. You're presenting situations and encounters to the whole group. So you can't know for sure that the character that you thought would handle something actually does it. Maybe they do something else completely. A job you thought might be perfect for that nimble rogue might end up in the hands of the not-so-dexterous barbarian. And that's okay in D&D. It's a game. But you should at least have those things built into your campaign. Think about what everybody likes to do or has the capability to do, and try to write that in so that those opportunities present themselves to all the different roles that are available. Even in the real world, by the way, it's okay for people to stretch beyond their comfort zone and experience new things. That's how they grow, that's how they learn. In business jargon, which is basically thieves' cant, stretch goals are purposely ambitious goals. They're intended to challenge someone from the outset and get them out of their comfort zone so they can learn something new. But that's the exception to the rule. The best managers I've ever worked with helped ensure that the work was assigned with a way that matched a person's capability and skill set. Okay to jump out of that from time to time, but you want to make sure that the people with the right skills are doing the right work. And so we know instinctively that certain roles should go to certain skill sets, but we also know that it's good to let other people grow and learn how to do things. Something else that parallels D&D, the best managers make sure their people have breaks. People have lives outside of their job, and even if they don't have a lot going on, it's important to take a mental health break. You need to make sure that you're breaking up the work to make sure that they are able to continue when it's needed. In D&D terms, you don't always want to wait until you're down to your last few hit points with no healing potions and the cleric doesn't have any spell slots left, and then decide, okay, I'll take a long rest now. You would have to, number one, but if you plan ahead, you can make sure that you're not in that spot where it could be life or death for that player character. If it does happen, you know it's circumstance. It's not the rule, it's the exception. In the real world, you want that too. You don't want to have people working themselves to the bone because that's just what it is all the time. The best managers know that the most productive people are rested and ready to give their all. Short and long rests are important. Alright, so we've got a diverse team with a variety of roles working to achieve some SMART goals. Great. But how we achieve the goal is just as important. I touched on this a little earlier, but milestones are actually a great way of ensuring progress towards a goal. This kind of works for managing teams on a project in general, but it definitely works for character advancement in D&D. It's actually laid out in the Dungeon Master Guide. I have to admit, every time I see milestone written on a project plan, I can't help but think of leveling up my character. Setting realistic milestones keeps the team moving toward a common goal, and it provides a sense of accomplishment when they need to get to that intermediate step in the journey. Also, in D&D, the path that the players and the characters take isn't always up to the DM. We know that to be railroading if it is, right? But providing some guidelines and those milestones that we discussed are still an effective way of keeping things moving. Think of navigating the ocean with a few waypoint locations before you get to your final destination. Now think of a manager as course correcting the ship instead of laying down the tracks. Course correcting is much better than railroading when it comes to D&D and for managing a team. But everybody loves reaching a goal, right? That's when the rewards happen. In D&D, it could be treasure, items, special abilities, or even level advancement like we talked about before. So those milestones might be you're leveling up, and they get better at the things they can do. If it's a team working on a project, they may not get the same type of treasure, but people are usually paid for their work in our world. But any project, even if it's a volunteer project, has milestones as a way to check progress toward a goal, and they also may feel a sense of accomplishment because of meeting those milestones. And for careers, it's not always about the money. Moving to a new position, getting a chance to work on something, actually using one of those stretch goals to grow and learn in their career, that could be rewarding too. But let's face it, it's mostly about the money. Thanks for sticking with me. I know that there are a lot of other things I could actually say on this topic. There are a lot more parallels that I could draw here, but I won't do that. I want to hear it from you. If you have any of your own ideas about this, please leave them in the comments below. I would love to hear it. I know there may be some cynics out there about drawing this comparison between D&D and managing teams of all kinds, but I want to leave you with a little geek philosophy from Glenn Cook, famous for writing one of my favorite fantasy series, The Black Company. Every ounce of my cynicism is supported by historical precedent. Cheers.